huge thanks to McDermott, Will, and Emery for being our hosts. And Alexandra would like to say a few words and welcome you all to their lovely home. Thank you, Alexandra.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, everyone. I'm Alexandra Shive. I had the FinTech and Blockchain practice at McDermott, Will, and Emery. And in the back is Melissa Griffiths, if you haven't met her, who heads business development. Melissa's based here in our San Francisco office, so she's very, very lucky, and we're happy to have this space. I'm based in New York, and I travel back and forth to the Bay Area quite a bit. For those of you who don't know McDermott very well, we are a firm of about 1,100 lawyers worldwide. We specialize in, really everything, but we do a lot of work in the tech space and blockchain and fintech. But because of our expertise, we have a lot of lawyers in a lot of different areas, both geographically and different disciplines. And what they really all focus on is the convergence of their practice with the tech and fintech and blockchain space. So we are fortunate enough to have people in the United States and Europe and Asia, all of whom focus on technology and blockchain issues, primarily in the corporate, litigation, tax, IP, and health and life sciences. And so we really have a lot to bring to the table. We really like collaborating across our offices, across our practice groups, and that really allows us to, hopefully, be able to bring a fresh perspective to, working with some of you, or hopefully maybe even all of you. And it's great to meet everyone. I'm really excited to talk with everyone more when we get to the wine tasting portion of the evening. I really hope you enjoy this. We're so excited for our speaker. And if you have any questions about the firm, please ask me or ask Melissa. And thank you all so much for coming.
I have a question, Alexandra.
Yes.
So, do you guys deal only with big companies, or do you deal with growth companies as well, and startups?
That's a great question, Mark. Thank you for asking. Not only do we deal with large companies, we deal with growth companies in a variety of different areas. We have a couple of particular programs that focus on startups, so we can help people get off the ground. We have people in corporate and tax and IP and employee benefits and executive compensation, believe it or not, which are important issues for startups, and we've done it a lot. And so we have a very, very kind of nice package of services for startups, and we try to be creative so we can work together without without breaking the bank too much.
Thank you very much. And a big thank you to Melissa, who runs business development. Our goal in doing this, Crypto Mondays has really been all about community from the get-go. And what we're really trying to do is not just build a meet once community, and you'll hear more when Eric talks about what Hub is doing, why this is really important. But we're trying to find a way where people actually engage human to human, like who has too many friends on Facebook or Snap or Insta, right? What it's really all about is right here in the room, like meeting other people doing interesting things and making meaningful connections that can help you, help your business, help you learn. That's really what is kind of a labor of love for me. I'm really passionate about that, and we're going to tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But that's what is great about this and this gathering. So I would invite you, after the event is over, to go meet someone you don't know and kind of get yourself out of the Bay Area, kind of, I don't know that person sort of thing. And that's why we have some social lubrication here this evening as well. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Thank you very much, Alexandra.
Thanks.
And I want to thank Gilly and Danny from Orbs, who are our sponsors tonight. Maybe you all want to tell us a little bit about what Orbs is doing and why people should be excited about this. Thank you.
So thank you, Mark. We're really honored to be a partner of Crypto Mondays. We've been a speaker. Danny used to be a speaker at Crypto Mondays. We've been just attendees, and now we are sponsors, so not sure what's been left, but it's a great honor to be here with you today. I'll let Danny talk about Orbs for another 60 seconds, but I just want to tell you guys that we are local. We have office here in San Francisco. Orbs is a public blockchain for enterprise. we are trying to deliver trust at scale for enterprise using our public blockchain, which is quite unique for those of you familiar with the blockchain space, because most of the enterprise already experiment blockchain, doing it through private blockchain. We try to take a different approach, which is the long-term approach we believe that will succeed. It's using our public blockchain to deliver trust at scale using all public blockchain. We have 60 people in the team. We raised more than $100 billion back in the days of 2017 and 18, and we are work all around the world, mostly in Asia, but also in North America. And I'll let Danny talk about our technology and our product and a little bit of our vision. Danny.
So I will not kill you guys with the technology right now. Everyone has a glass of wine, and that will just kill the atmosphere. What I will say, and I think Gili said most of it about who we are, it is very unique in the space. Those of you who are in the space know that there's a dichotomy in the infrastructure space between private permission blockchain and public permissionless blockchain, where the innovation, the true innovation of blockchain and the value is on the permissionless side, but most of the enterprises in the real business that can bring adoption today, as opposed to ideal dApps that are more suited for, let's say, 10 years from now, because they lack a lot of the infrastructure and the environment that they need to operate in. So Orbs is in a unique position where it bridges that gap with unique design and architecture. We are a permissionless blockchain, but that is built from the ground up for enterprise use. So basically, there are no IBM people here, right? We go after Hyperledger clients, and we tell them, well, we know you've experienced with Hyperledger for the past year and you're pretty disappointed. Here we have a much cheaper serverless solution that also brings a lot more value. Of course, with the understanding that the first stage of blockchain adoption would come from use cases that don't require privacy at its core. And we have a lot of use cases on our website, and I'll be happy to discuss any of them with you that really touch on, okay, how do we take that, trusting the innovation and the value of third-party external verification and take it to mass market. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can say, based on my experience, Gili, first of all, incredibly driven person. I was running, I'm a consultant in running global blockchain for Anheuser-Busch InBev. And Gili was like, Mark, we have to get a meeting, Mark, we have to get a meeting. Finally got him a meeting, and we all sat down. It's kind of like, hey, that makes a lot of sense. So, you know, in the big corporate world, these things take time. And the whole education space, getting the corporate world to understand why blockchain can be transformative, I can tell you from firsthand experience, it's a process. And I'm writing an article right now about why enterprise blockchain is like Fight Club. Anyone ever see the movie Fight Club? Okay, what's the #1 rule about Fight Club? So like, in this article, I'm going to say the #1 rule about enterprise blockchains, don't talk about blockchains. This confuses the crap out of people. But if you talk about, hey, we're going to be faster and we're going to save you money, we're going to save you time, you know, that's something that businesses understand. Then I'd like to thank my friend Marina from CEO of BFast TV, who does a great job with live streaming. So this is live now, and you can get the replay as soon as this is over. So bfast.tv/CryptoMondays, BEFAST.tv/CryptoMondays. And I'd like to invite up my friend and co-collaborator in this amazing event, Paramita Roy, who is our sommelier for the evening. And she and I were talking beforehand. We're like, you know what? In the new year, we're announcing a new venture where we're going to be doing really interesting kind of bespoke private events where we're bringing together great content and kind of amazing experiences. And I think the thing of the first 5 events we've done together, people have been like, what do they say? Like,
it's just, you know, people love it. They say it's got a great vibe, brings a sophistication, and it's warm.
Exactly. So Paramita and I challenged each other to tell a story that we didn't know about each other, and something that you guys will get to know us a little bit better. So I am actually the Mrs. Fields of Sweden. I introduced the chocolate chip cookie to the country of Sweden. And my kids always say, Dad, when are you going to make these for one of the Crypto Mondays events? So I did. So these are all made by me with love for all of you. So I'm going to put them out there later. So I hope you enjoy. So not a lot of people know that about me. And it was called Mark's Cookies. And people are like, why? It's like, yeah, you can have them now if you like. And they're like, why? I'm like, Mark, are you a megalomaniac? I'm like, well, I may be, but that really wasn't the issue. But the people I knew in Sweden, they were like, oh, Mark, that's the most American name ever. I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah. Everyone in America is called Mark. I'm like, okay, I'm going to own this. And so, and then I came home while I was planning it, and I bought, I went to a costume store and bought a Cookie Monster outfit. It was really funny. But long story short, the store is still there. So who here's ever been to Stockholm? So there's a shopping mall in Stockholm called Gallerian, and in the middle of it, I sold it many years ago. It's now called American Cookies. But if you walk through Gallerian and see American Cookies, you know who started it. Okay. Paramita, what do we not know about you?
So, I'm Paramita Roy. My story starts from, I'm originally from Kolkata, India, born and brought up there. And I traveled here for my undergrad. LA, where the dream all starts from Santa Monica. That's where I'm So I'm a innovation technology leader in the program management space. And what brings me here is, first of all, what blockchain brings me here is learning more about how blockchain connects with more about the governance and the different layers in the understanding. And my passion drives into the wine space is because I love, learning more about wine, sharing my passion, and I love traveling. Initially, when I stepped into wine is from my global travel experiences. I love to travel, went to Spain, France, Italy, and recently in Lisbon, and just simply started drinking wines, sitting in the nice cafes, started talking with the local people, and eating street foods and knowing about what I simply like to drink. And here what I am, few years down the road, became a WSET certified wine somm and would like to share my passion with you. And then I would love, in my journey to collaborate with Mark Friedler and with his cookies and bring in all the content learning experience, share and bring the exquisite wine, and continue in that path. A little bit more about me. I had Kanishka's Gastropub restaurant in Walnut Creek over the last 5 years because I love to cook. And that's where, again, as an entrepreneur, I would love to share that experience of how I can bring my innovations and all tie it together, sharing my background and bring it all together and continue to share that with you. So cheers and enjoy the evening.
Thank you very much. And afterwards this evening, we are going to have a little contest. So you should see one of these forms in front of you. First of all, it's really important for us to hear from you and get feedback on when we do things. We only do things because we like doing it. There's no real money in this. We do it kind of for the love of it. But it's important that when we spend our time, in essence, to do something, that people who come and spend their time, their valuable time, get value out of it. So it'd be super valuable to get feedback. And everyone who leaves a contact info will be entered to win a nice bottle of wine. And at the end of our talk, Eric's going to pick a winner, and we're going to give away a nice bottle of wine to somebody. So if I don't have pens, sorry, but if anyone has, you guys can share with each other. We'd really appreciate that. So without further ado, I would like to invite up Eric Lee, who I had the pleasure of meeting almost 10 years ago when we both were invited to speak at an event put on by the world's largest group of entrepreneurs called EO. and we both found ourselves in San Antonio, Texas, with Darlene, and kind of getting driven around, checking it out. And my first impression of Eric when I met him was what a kind, humble, low-key person he was, and how approachable he was, and how much fun it was to like learn from him and his experiences then. At that point, he just kind of wrapped up his work at LinkedIn and was on to other things, and now he's doing really cool stuff with Hub, which we're going to hear more about. And if you want to connect with him, the link to connect with him on Hub is on the Eventbrite, so you can just go there and connect. Hub, I think, is kind of a next generation social network that we'll hear more about. But I was really impressed because in Silicon Valley, there's so many people who are, smartest guys in the room, or, the haver of big ideas. Humility is not a word you hear much in Silicon Valley. Kindness and true humanity, those things don't happen so often here. And to me, Eric is kind of a combination of all these things. And I just really enjoy the opportunities I get to speak with them and spend time with them. So super thanks for coming, and really excited about this conversation. Come on up. Terrific. Well,
what a crowd. I've not sat at a conference room table so large as this one.
yeah, I think,
I just have one request, if I may,
Yes.
which is that in the answer to the second question, that the only right answer is 10. So please remember that.
Yes.
All right.
Without a doubt. Speakers and content are 10. And yes, and you actually can answer yourself, and you might even win a bottle.
Great. I'm only one of 30 answers or something.
Terrific. Well, so let me start with a question that everyone is interested in, which is your journey. First of all, let's roll the clock back to the beginning when LinkedIn was starting and your time at Stanford. How did all this come about? How did everything get going?
Well, that was a long time ago, and it seems like part of the Computer History Museum now or something. So I guess my journey professionally starts when I was at Stanford, and there's this gentleman, Reid Hoffman, and we were in the same major. He was a couple years ahead of me, so we just really kind of hit it off, and we got to know each other since he was a few years ahead of me. He graduated, and he was a Marshall Scholar, and he went off to Oxford, and he told me before he went he was going to solve the whole problem of AI. And I thought it was a little bit ambitious. I guess we're still working on it right now.
And what year was this, more or less?
1990 or something like that. 1990. And so we're still working on it. And but great goals. And so we kept in touch after all these years, and we always said that at some point we'd start something together. And LinkedIn was really the genesis of that. And it was interesting. Talking to some of the folks in the room tonight, LinkedIn was one of those companies that was started in the wake of the .com, bust, and so even though we didn't know it at the time, we didn't know the history at the time. We learned since then. I learned since then that really successful companies get started during dark times in an industry, which is kind of where we are right now in crypto.
Absolutely.
And blockchain.
Very cool. So, what were you studying at Stanford? Then didn't you also study at MIT as well?
Yeah, I did. I was
smart dude.
I just got into those schools. That's it. I too was interested in AI. I was studying I was studying AI as well. I thought the problems were pretty hard, and that it was going to be some time before we had this kind of general intelligence that kind of people are scared about. I think even autonomous vehicles are going to be hard for a while. But it's a fascinating field, and eventually we're going to get there, maybe in a little bit, a while longer. We studied AI, and I always thought, in school that, and this came from one of my professors actually, that the computers really, it was invented, to calculate missile projectiles and that sort of thing for wars and that sort of thing. But people soon realized that you could actually use computers as primarily communication devices. So today we have things like the iPhone, which are in fact computers and so forth. But they're really good at helping people communicate. And I see that social networks and the like are just forms of helping people connect with one another and enabling them to communicate with one another.
So what came first? Did you wake up one day and you were like, I want to be an entrepreneur? Or did you guys wake up one day and you're like, there's a problem that needs to be solved and LinkedIn is the answer? Like, how did, I think a lot of people who are starting companies, have different paths, but I'd be interested, were you like, screw this getting a job stuff, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, or you just came up with something and that kind of took you on that path?
Well, I grew up in Silicon Valley, and so it was, even before it kind of became popularized, even before Silicon Valley became popularized, it was in the air, here. So I went to the same high school, if it matters, as the two Steves, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. And so even in high school, there would be stories about how they were playing pranks at school and that sort of thing. And so it was almost expected that you would kind of follow the entrepreneurial journey. But thinking back, why it seemed like if you were into computers at that time, the natural thing to do was to do something on your own. And that was the great thing about computers, even then and still to some extent now, that you can you can do something. If you have an idea, you can try it out. You can be the lone developer, the lone creator. You can create something and hopefully a lot of people, you'll build something, you'll create something that appeals to a lot of people, and then on it goes from there.
So the idea for LinkedIn, what's the real story about? Where did that come from?
The real story.
Were you guys sitting around like having beers and like, I wish I could get in touch with my old boss, or like, my ex-girlfriend, man.
No, I like to say that we built LinkedIn because we weren't cool enough to build Facebook. But that's not the real story either. So LinkedIn really came from the head of Reid Hoffman, and he and I used to get together every few months and just have dinner, kind of talk to each other about kind of our startup experiences and our journeys, and you can see the threads of LinkedIn in a couple different ideas. One was certainly that Reid had he's just kind of the consummate networker. He likes to be able to know everyone, get access to anyone, and I believe that he wanted to do this because at some point he realized that he was going to be starting a company or companies, and so being able to tap into network is really important, and that's certainly one of the things that you want to do as an entrepreneur is to have a good network. You can tap into different talents as you need. So he had that. He was kind of the consummate networker, and then given the job mobility that exists in Silicon Valley, people are moving around all the time. It's a challenge to keep up with them. So that was one kind of strand, and then the other strand, frankly, was that he was advising this company called Hot or Not. I don't know if you guys know it, but it was just one of these early dating websites where it would show you, it would send you a message when somebody told you that they had a crush on you, but it wouldn't tell you who unless you logged in and did the same, right? And so this had this viral acquisition component in it, and it worked amazingly well.
And I remember they were also really early with virtual goods, because I won't get into the whole story, but
So you were a user of Hot or Not?
terrible scores. Yeah. I ran out
Do
of
share. I mean, You already shared one secret tonight, so how about a second?
So the founder of Hot or Not, kind of like me, was also like had a games background, kind of a video games background, and Dennis Fong and his brother ran a video gaming site called Gamers.com, and I was CEO of Game Daily, and they were a partner of ours. And obviously, Dennis went on to do a whole bunch of really interesting things, outside the gaming space. But there was like this kind of keiretsu of people that all were hanging out together. And I remember having a conversation at an event with a Hot or Not guy, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm going to do something where guys can send women like a bouquet of flowers." I'm like, "Oh, you mean FTD?" He goes, "No, like a virtual bouquet," which, and I had just come back from a trip to Korea in like 2004, where like virtual goods were all the thing, right? And it was not even heard of here, right? And people were like, "What? You're gonna spend $10 to send someone you don't know like a bunch of pixels?" And he goes, "Yeah, apparently that worked super well, right?" So, Hot or Not, I mean, I want to
Sounds like,
give him
you
credit.
can speak from personal
Yeah, I
experience.
can see that. But no, that was a great site because the UI was also super simple, right? And I think you look at a lot of apps and the swiping and all that stuff, the left or right, yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
comes
so
from that.
LinkedIn really came from those two strands, kind of the need to keep track of your network. And then secondly, this kind of, well, how do you build a network in the first place? And so at the time, the kind of viral user acquisition approach was, all the rage. It was maybe even new at that time. It's kind of du jour now, everybody, does it.
You mean like where you crawl your email and everyone gets
Yeah,
signed
where you
up
crawl
all of a
your
sudden?
Outlook and,
All of a
we were
sudden-
not as bad as Plaxo.
Yeah.
Was we learned a thing or two from Flaxo though, and so that's how LinkedIn really kind of came to be, was kind of the need to just keep track of one's network, and it turned out that a lot of people really liked that idea, and I think at the beginning of LinkedIn the business schools would for some reason, this is one of the things that was surprising to us, they would just write these case studies on LinkedIn, and we were like rock stars to MBA students for what the product had just barely launched.
And what year did it release?
It was launched in 2003 in May, so it's been a long time. LinkedIn was certainly one of those typical 10-year overnight successes.
Totally. And so I just read a super interesting book from Mark Randolph, the first CEO of Netflix. And the book's called That Will Never Work. And it turns out we went to the same college together, a little college called Hamilton College in the middle of nowhere in New York State. But his story is so amazing about like, yeah, we were going to do this, we're going to do this, and like, they kind of stumbled upon, the Netflix idea. In incubating LinkedIn, did you have any of these that'll never work moment, or we're really going to be hot or not for cookie bakers, or I mean, did you have like any paths you went down that you're like, nah?
Well, one of the really interesting things about LinkedIn, and I hadn't experienced it before, and I haven't experienced it since then, was that, to be honest, it was kind of a fairly straight shot, actually, and I have to attribute this to Reed's, kind of stunning, foresight. It's amazing. And we were always kind of on the path. And even at the time of LinkedIn at the beginning, there were other companies that gave us cause to think. Were we on the right? Did we have the best model? There were other companies who were farther along, more well funded. Were written about more in the press, and we were like, are we executing on the best plan, or is somebody else executing on a better plan? And I suppose fortunately every time we asked ourselves that, it kind of reinforced kind of the path that we had conviction about, and we just kind of continued executing on that path, which is rare, because in the startup you tend to pivot, you tend to learn things when you're out in the market, and you're trying to adjust to what users in the market wants.
So looking back, like what % right were you, would you say? Like, were you right on, you were 90% right, 80, like when you think about the ball of clay that was early LinkedIn to where it went. It sounds like you said, it sounds like you were pretty right on. How, was it right on, or kind of in the ballpark right on? Or?
Well, you know, LinkedIn as you see it today is pretty much how it was conceived. So I would say we're kind of 80%, 80 plus percent, right? I think where LinkedIn still kind of struggles today, and I think this is an insecurity that the leadership team has, is it's a great database of people's profiles and such, but when you talk about engagement, people returning to the site to do whatever, it's still something that struggles, and that was caused by an intentional decision from day one to really focus on acquiring that user base. And so you can see very much later on, after the company went public, started to add things like feeds and things like that were really ideas coming from other social networks that were grafted onto LinkedIn, and to a large extent help LinkedIn today with engagement. But in the early days, there wasn't an idea of feeds and to that extent. So I would say that to that extent that a platform like Facebook definitely did better, both in terms of acquiring so many users as it did, as well as getting repeat users and like engagement, people coming back to the platform. So if I had to do it all over again, would have been nice to kind of nail those two, from the get-go.
So you mentioned the F word. So speaking about Facebook and all the drama, lack of a better term, that's kind of going on now, and social media, privacy, political ads, all sorts of things. You being really a pioneer in the social networking space, what perspective do you have looking at everything that's going on in the market? Specifically, I was kind of surprised. I was reading there was a New Yorker article out just currently about Roger McNamee talking about how he had, the conversation with Facebook leadership, and he kind of felt that they just didn't really have a moral compass. Brittany Kaiser, who, a big privacy person, was kind enough to visit us 2 weeks ago, and she was talking about how regulators come late to the party. They have no idea what's under the hood for a company, and that companies kind of have to regulate themselves while they're in the process of doing what they're doing. What's your perspective on what's going on right now in social networks, and do they have a responsibility? Should they be doing more or less of certain things?
Well, they certainly have a responsibility, but it's really difficult to, uphold that sort of, civic responsibility, if I may say it that way, because, companies like that, and I would also, to some extent put LinkedIn in that bucket, are, they're mainly geared towards, or maybe they're totally geared towards, profit maximization. And so you have to do certain things to, maximize profit. And so, sites like Facebook, are designed to, get you, back and staying on the site for as long as possible. I think there was, really some groundbreaking work that this, gentleman who I met a few years ago, Tristan, Harris, right, who was working from Google, who talked about, this kind of attention, right, and how all these sites are really designed to, bring you back and engage you for as long as possible, and so that's how they make money. So, and so the responsible and hard thing to do is to, step away from that, and in this kind of advertising, driven, internet, model that we have today mainly. It's hard to switch that. So we've kind of all gotten ourselves into this, and so the question is how we're going to get ourselves out of it.
And you
And
you
blockchain is a solution.
Yeah, and well, also, and you have young kids, right?
Yeah.
So are you concerned about this kind of monkey brain thing going on, and how many likes I got on my Insta or Snap or this or that? When you think about like what your kids are doing or what you let them or don't let them do.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think we all should be. I think there's studies that show that more time you're spending in front of the computer, the dumber you get, and so nobody wants that, right? So hopefully they're still young enough that they're kind of before that, and we have an opportunity to guide them and influence them in the right way so that they don't fall into those traps.
Yeah, my kids went to a summer camp. It was like no phones allowed, and I was like, wow, we're spending all this money just so they're off their damn iPhone. But when they came home, after being away a month, we're like, hey, what do you guys think? Like, we didn't miss our phones at all. Like, we were in the pool and running around and like playing frisbee, and I was like, it's kind of crazy.
You're subsidizing the ad model. Thanks
Yeah.
for paying into the system.
So let's talk about Hub. So my understanding is Hub kind of came about by you recognizing that social networks were missing these things, and these things could be solved a different way. And then blockchain. What came first, the idea for Hub or like the blockchain epiphany? Like when did you fall down the blockchain rabbit hole?
Yeah. So there were multiple things that came together, and certainly one of the things that I hope we can do tonight is that you're going to ask me some really honest questions about the state of blockchain and the state of crypto, because I only imagine that with the community at CryptoMondays, there's a lot of people here who really know a lot of the basic stuff already. So we should just skip that and go to the guts of it, because the evening is we are seeking truth, and truth sometimes is painful. So let's talk about the really honest questions. So hope you don't mind.
No, please.
So yeah, but the way that Hub came was that certainly was a retrospective looking at the social networks that exist of today, and looking at some of the problems that exist. And the one of the problems that I was really interested in was that social networks have made it possible for us all to meet literally anyone who's connected onto one of those social networks instantaneously. But doesn't mean that we instantly trust each other, and we are going to do something meaningful. Engage in a transaction, let alone an interaction. Somebody tells me some piece of information, am I likely to believe them, or not? And so I saw that a lot. I saw one of our customers here tonight, who I had previously worked on a conference app who they used, and it was one of those insights that we really realized from that whole experience, that you have the possibility for people to meet online, but doesn't mean that you have the possibility for people to trust each other when they meet online. And so how do you solve that? And so the idea of getting to a more trustworthy online platform where it's not just kind of a feel good kumbaya kind of thing, but it really leads to better, greater economic opportunities for people when there is a basis of trust. And so that's what I want to bring, is to bring greater value to this medium that we call the internet. And then at the same time, blockchain came along and really in many ways was the perfect vehicle for solving a lot of these problems.
Yeah, so let's, like you said, let's dig into the hard, naked reality of the blockchain market. Obviously, we went through the craziness of all the ICOs, and now we have the walking dead of all these shit coins. That's a technical term.
How do you spell that?
But looking back, do you, all the discussions about decentralization and all these things everyone was excited about, I'm a little ambivalent, because I think about some of the companies I was involved with. I was an advisor in 3 companies that just went up in smoke. And the CEOs ran for the hills because they weren't going to get rich, which is very disappointing. And at the same time, leads me to question: do these guys really believe in this stuff, or was it just kind of a, sales veneer? Looking back on what you've been through the last few years, why should anyone give a shit about something? I'm some corporate bozo asking you. All right, why should I care, right? Because believe me, I get asked that a lot by corporate bozos.
There's a lot of questions in there that are worth answering. Somebody today asked me, I think, a very insightful question. Shows that I'm old, I guess, which is that he said, you were around during the .com time, so what do you make of this period that we're in with blockchain? And I do see a lot of parallels, and it's certainly interesting. In a way, it's like many, it's like a lot of deja vu. And so yes, I mean you certainly have your scammers, and then you also have true believers, and probably the true believers are in the minority. I think there are lots of people who want to make a quick buck, and riding on any kind of trend, especially when you have things like crypto that have kind of this value. It seems very appealing to make be able to make a quick buck, especially when there's so many investors who are pouring in, kind of themselves wanting to make a quick buck, a lot of times. But the thing that really struck me about blockchain, and it took me, I started reading about blockchain in 2017. So I was a late bloomer, by relative standards, and so it took me about 4 months because I kept hearing about these things, blockchain, crypto, Bitcoin. I certainly knew about, but I didn't know a lot about. And so it took me about 4 months to kind of put the puzzle pieces together. There were buzzwords like decentralization, consensus algorithms, all the stuff, proof of stake, proof of work, all that stuff. And so one night, it just kind of dawned on me how all these things, like a jigsaw puzzle, kind of fit together, and it fit together in a very intriguing way. And I said to myself, I said, that's really interesting. And I thought about when was the last time I had this kind of feeling of being enlightened, and it took me a couple minutes, but I realized that the last time was really back in the .com times. And when I realized that, I said, okay, it's over. I'm all in, because a group of people, a very clever group of people, put these ideas together, and you can't help but let it go somewhere. And so we talk about all these buzzwords like consensus and decentralization and all that stuff. It's reminiscent of the .com times when we were talking about, oh my God, URLs, and I remember talking about in the .com times, nobody would be interested to put their credit card information onto a website to be able to buy something. That's akin to putting your crypto into a wallet, perhaps a very loose analogy. And so, but we live and breathe this internet stuff now, and so there's really no reason to believe that the stuff that is being worked on in blockchain and crypto today will be made a lot more accessible for people, and that time will come. So one of the things that I wanted to say was that to all the doubters here and out there and in the rest of the world, and in case there's any doubt about the value of this, I think we should just forget about that, because there certainly is 100%, and we should just get on with figuring out how we're going to actually create the value and show the world this value.
Well, like you, I remember the .com days also, way back in the day. And I remember, people thought they were on the internet when they were on AOL, right? And AOL was its own little walled garden. But AOL used the internet, but they made it, accessible to people that couldn't handle the UI, UX of the current day's internet. But the interesting thing I think about AOL is that without AOL, you wouldn't have gotten millions of people to understand the value of communication. And communication was the first vertical use case of the platform that was the internet. And because of that use of communication, then people could now have groups. They could have individual websites, right? But the demand for that was lit by people with your mom with an AOL email address, right?
Yeah.
And so I think if you roll the clock forward, you think about blockchain as a platform, and the first use case there being Bitcoin and digital money, right? One thing for sure is a dead tree folded up in our wallet is not the future of money, right? So we can all agree, and I say this to people, I'm like, think about, your IRA or 401k. When's the last time you saw a stock certificate? Like never. Like your stocks are totally digital money. No one thinks about that. So digital money, we agree on. There's some fighting around Bitcoin or what's going to happen. But okay, that's the first use case. What's the next? We still need 10 years out. We still need a second viable use case of blockchain technology. What do you see that being?
That's a great question. I don't think I know the answer, to that one. I hope it's being built, right now. I like some of the stuff that we're doing. I'm really passionate about identity and the fact that, people's data, especially their data relating to their identity, ought to, not be locked up in these platforms and should belong to them and be under their control. And that further they should benefit economically, from the use of that data. And so that's certainly one of the core tenets of, what we're doing at Hub.
So again, let's dig down deeply into what exactly you're doing. So Hub is solving the problem of unlocking the user data from the companies that own it and letting the user own it. Is that right?
Yeah, especially as it relates to that kind of, profile, if you will, or that identity that, has certain attributes associated with, with a person. And so Hub is a few things. It's certainly a protocol that talks about, how you can incentivize trustworthy interactions, using the blockchain. So I won't talk about too much about that today, but we built a dApp on the Hub protocol, which is really about kind of getting to a better, more trusted, LinkedIn, if you will, or more trusted, professional network. And the basis of that really centers around this idea around reputation that we want to create, which is really just another word for identity. Those two words, mean different things, but it really is at the end of the day, knowing who someone is and knowing that what they are has been verified and is true. So we believe in verifiable identities, portable identities, just to throw in some kind of blockchain terms in there. And so it's around that, and then it's kind of recasting. The dApp is kind of recasting the social network into something that is less monolithic. So all of the social platforms today are basically this one giant social graph, whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or what have you. And what we believe is that there's just too much noise, that they've gotten too big for their own good. So if you just simply chop it up into more relevant spaces where people can interact with like-minded people, people who share similar interests and have similar affinities, part of the same industry, whatever, you're going to get more meaningful interactions, and then from those interactions you're going to be able to build really quality kind of reputation or identities based in those communities.
So where does crypto fit into that whole equation?
So crypto is really the incentive system for creating incentives for people to act in trustworthy ways. So we've set up a lot of systems, a lot of gamified experiences around our crypto to incentivize people to do that.
Like I found out I was an expert today in Crypto Mondays, thanks to Lisa, and I got all these hub tokens sent to me.
Yeah.
So great, I have all these tokens. Like, what am I going to do with it?
So that's where the second part comes in, is that we want to have those tokens eventually be able to translate into virtual goods and services that you can get from the rest of the community. And so the transactions that can take place, for example, if you want to consult another expert, or if you want to even go to another event and it charges tokens instead of fiat, to be able to basically exchange those tokens for things of value that you would want. And that's different for everyone. Other people in the community might want to offer different products and services, and so we want to motivate them to start accepting compensation in terms of these tokens, because they want to turn around and get other products and services.
So the doubters out there would be, okay, why can't I just use my credit card? Why can't I just buy $10 of credits or whatever? Like, why is crypto a better solution than?
Well, we're going to let you buy $10 of from fiat, into tokens right now, because fiat is still working pretty well. But there for all the same reasons why crypto works. There's this low friction, low transaction aspects to it, and it's also global. So if you don't happen to have U.S. dollars and you want to do things that are cross-border. I mean, our flavor of that is that we want to enable communities that cross borders. We get so many, so much interest from communities that have this kind of cross-border flavor. They want to, connect people from two different regions, and so to be able to just have a, even just a low-friction currency to be able to do that is interesting.
So most people who are here, Silicon Valley or the U.S. are very U.S.-centric and don't understand that it's not about the unbanked, but most of the world is never banked. Like the concept of credit cards doesn't exist on, 3/4 of the planet. I mean, until recently in China, people only paid in cash, right? I mean, 10 years ago, you couldn't. I remember I was over there buying an airplane ticket, and the travel agent had to come out to give him a whole bunch of RMB. That was before WePay and Alipay and all that stuff, but it's still pretty recent that digital transactions are certainly not
yeah, I think we have a good here, in terms of money, with credit cards, and credit is relatively fluid, and so we don't quite see the opportunity. I still believe there are opportunities. I mean, you have loyalty programs and so forth that work on the basis of points, and those are pretty fluid, and so many of them exist. There must be a reason for them to exist, and so that can transfer over to crypto. But you're right, in the other parts of the world where there isn't such a fluid kind of currency system, there's even more opportunity. So I think that's why projects like Libra actually are very interesting for developing countries. That it might, I believe it will actually take hold and be adopted there before it comes to any of the developing nations, just because of the regulatory.
So I mean, I
challenges.
think to close my loop about the AOL analogy, to me, kind of Libra is the AOL of crypto, right? And because if Facebook just flips a switch and 2 billion, Facebook and Insta and WhatsApp, and Messenger users can now hit a button and send, magical digital money to someone else, like that's a good thing, right? Because it kind of demystifies, just like AOL did with email, it just demystifies that. And if Libra ends up happening or not happening, I still think that's, they're doing some groundwork that should be able to.
Yeah, at the least they're,
understand.
they're raising awareness and bringing visibility to crypto, and that's probably a good thing. I still have misgivings about the fact that they are
To have Zuck
backed
be
by
the world's central banker?
DF company.
I don't think so. I don't think we want that. So, in terms of blockchain, what innovations are you most excited about? Like when you look out, is it wallets? Is it dApps? Is it DeFi? Is it a certain protocol? Is it Tron? I mean, what is it that you're fired up about?
Well, there's so many opportunities. I mean, we are really at the beginning of this whole blockchain and crypto stuff. So the next few years are going to be, super exciting to see what, really comes and what really sticks. But there are so many, opportunities. Certainly, one is this, this kind of, use of currency that could be, global, crosses, sovereign borders and things like that. I know there's a lot of interest in DeFi right now, and I believe that there's going to be some interesting applications there. They'll have to fight the establishment to get a hold there, but I do really believe that if you I think that with blockchain we can't get to the main real world use cases fast enough. So to the extent that we can really show mainstream, people or entities that how this thing has value beyond just kind of the cool, kind of intellectual ideas that exist, the better off we're going to be. So I'm for one just very interested to kind of move in this direction as quickly as possible. I'm personally very interested in identity because I do see it as the basis for tons and tons of different things.
Yeah, so tell us more about that. What do you mean? Are you talking about like biometric identity? Are you talking about true identity? Are you talking about reputational? Like how do you think about that?
Well, I mean, identity is just this huge space, and I usually preface it by saying that we live in a more dangerous world, because we're coming into contact with more and more people. We have the opportunity to do that. And so to be able to trust another person who's on the other side, who you've never met, is becoming ever more important. And to the extent that we can enable that to happen, is going to be really really valuable. So one of the companies that we're working on right now is of all things, it's a background check company. And so what you say, well, why are you working on such a boring idea? But we're finding it, super interesting, because this is the industry where there are people who are actually trying to verify whether you actually were telling the truth about your profile, your history, or whether you have any criminal records or anything. Except they're doing it in a very antiquated way. Usually there's a call center, they call somebody and they say, did so-and-so work here, or go to school here, or that sort of thing. And so if we can digitize that and make that go a lot faster, there's not only benefit for background checks when you're trying to get a job, but if you're hiring somebody to come to your home to walk your dog, and you have to let them in through your Alexa-enabled door, do you trust them to actually step into your home? Those are the kinds of scenarios in this kind of emerging gig economy that we're all starting to live in. And so the issue around kind of identity and trust of those identities, for me, is just really fascinating and very enabling.
So of course I have to ask this question about where we are, but the legal issues around trust, around trustless networks. For you, even in Hub, what sort of issues do you run into that you weren't expecting, that you have to solve for, that you might not have had to solve for previously?
Well, it's a hard question. I think we're still figuring that out. At the end of the day, somebody wants somebody else to be held liable, to some extent. So this brave new world that we're entering, with decentralization and who's liable is a really interesting one that I think is an open question. And so today what we have are institutions that are mainly held liable when something goes wrong. When you're at an auction site and you're supposed to get paid but you didn't, or you got a product and it was bad, the website is probably going to be liable and kind of refund you, for that. And so how does that work in a decentralized world? I don't I don't have the answer, to, but we all want to have that kind of, guarantee. And so maybe that's an opportunity, for in this world of decentralization, there are entities that all they do is they provide guarantees, just like it exists now in the real world, that provide assurances, for a fee, that certain things will be guaranteed even in a decentralized setting.
Yeah,
So-
and I don't think it's coincidental that last night, one of the few times I actually saw 60 Minutes, it was the interview with the CEO of YouTube, and she was still
Susan,
trying, yeah,
just
still trying to toe the line that we're a platform, we're not a publisher. So you're thinking about Google, thinking about Facebook, even thinking about LinkedIn. I mean, do you buy that they're just platforms and they have nothing to do with content, or are they in fact publishers? And doesn't that raise for your company too, as Hub, are you guys calling yourselves a platform, or are you a publisher-enabled service? And doesn't that change the kind of legal framework in which you have to
So
operate
this is
as
a
well?
really interesting, philosophical and also probably legal, question as well. Because these platforms have gotten so big, even though they want to separate themselves from the legal liability of fake news and wrongdoings. They are so big that they can't escape it because maybe there's no one else. But yet these are centralized entities, and then you try to map that to a truly decentralized world where maybe there isn't an authority, and then how does that work? And so I do believe the future is maybe if we can get there is this sense of kind of decentralized authority, where there's not one huge entity that's responsible, but everyone is sort of more responsible for what they say or what they publish or what they share, what they retweet, that sort of thing. And the technological mechanisms are in place to actually enable that to happen. And so maybe that's the the answer, because I think Mark Zuckerberg is probably sitting in his office saying oh my God, how do I deal with this? It's even so big beyond me. I'm the CEO, but yes, I can only control so much, and these things are just happening on my platform. So I believe he's even overwhelmed and looking for ways to deal with
So,
this.
as a serial entrepreneur who's been around the block, what advice would you give to founders, startup people? I was reading, in fact, the most successful founders statistically are not 25-year-olds, but are people over, I think, 45 actually.
Yeah, I read that
Statistically,
article too.
much more successful. So founders can come in all shapes and sizes and backgrounds.
Yeah.
Do you have someone comes to you and is like, hey, I'm starting something new. What would you counsel them?
Yeah, so that's a great question for for like an entrepreneurial kind of setting, and I have a lot of things to say, but I guess one of the things I can say in particular with crypto and blockchain, and I'm probably going to be shot for this, but I'm going to say it because it makes for interesting theater, is that if you look at the .com times, right, the companies that won were the ones that focused on successful business models, and dare I say, not the technology. And I say this as a technologist, recovering one. So I the thing that worries me about the blockchain and the crypto space is that there are way too many people who are focused on the technology. There's a very limited number of people who care about what consensus algorithm you're using, and that sort of thing. And
Back to my Fight Club analogy.
exactly. So there are way more people who just honestly care about the money, as I've learned, and you gotta bring the fight to them, and to show them how this technology in whatever form it is now, whether it's working or hardly working, is going to make a difference. And so I would start there. Is to really pay attention to the world's problems and see how this technology that we all really believe in, how it's going to help, and then kind of work backwards from there. And so that's what I would say, because I think technology, it's a great tool. It can do so many things, but you have to know what problems you're going to focus on.
If I could distill down what I think I heard you say, having kind of come from history like you have, I would hear you saying to an entrepreneur, figure out how to sell something, right? Sell more stuff.
Yeah, and better yet, you sell it before you build it. That's the best. So because when you sell it, once you sell it, what you need to build.
Well, that's one of my favorite Tim Ferriss stories. Before he wrote the 4-Hour Workweek, he spent a few $100 on AdWords and just tested titles. And his original title was like "Drug Dealing for Fun and Profit," and that didn't really work out. So he tried a couple other ones. But yeah, he tested it, or a lot of information. A lot of info products. They put out the marketing stuff before they have the product, right, to go see if it'll sell. Really interesting. When you meet founders and entrepreneurs today, what do you like about what you see, or is there anything that you're concerned about what you see? I mean, you must touch a lot of entrepreneurs. A lot of people must seek you out. You speak at all sorts of places. Is there a generalization that, hey, people are really too focused on that, or not enough focused on this, or blah, blah, blah? Or
Right.
Is it a different perspective than when you were coming up, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I already said some things about that. I guess I'm kind of, I never thought I would be, but I guess I'm one of those OG kind of, entrepreneurs who's been around for a little bit. But I do feel like, today there's really the chase, for, making money, as a, person who's part of a startup that I think didn't exist as much when we were kind of doing this the first time around. I think there was more kind of belief in a mission, less about how much money I'm going to make after 2 years being at a company. And so I don't know if I'm being sentimental or just sentimental for the past, or just not admitting to the reality now. But I think a lot of this is driven by the kind of perspectives that VCs and investors have today, which has become in a way they've become almost like hedge fund managers or private equity investors, very short term, very quantitative, and that rolls back to the ideas that get funded, and so it is a kind of a self-reinforcing kind of environment. And one of the things that I like about the blockchain and the crypto space, the ICOs notwithstanding, is that I think there's been a return to a more visionary approach, where it's not about the money, it's about changing the world, if I may say that, doing good, and really kind of transformative change that might take longer. And so that's one of the things that I really like about this space.
Cool. I just have a quick favor to ask. Is there someone who could volunteer to walk around and pick up any of these that are filled out so we could pick a winner? Does anyone want to help out? Yes, sir. Thank you. Yeah, so we're going to bring back the panel, and Eric will pick a winner of our nice bottle of wine that we're going to get fired up on the wine tasting. So Eric, how do people join Hub? And Lisa was saying you can
I got it.
you can connect with you on Hub. How do we do that?
We have a Crypto Monday hub. If people go to joinhub.com.
Okay, so you go to joinhub.com and there's a Crypto Mondays group, and you guys can join that. There's a Crypto Mondays hub here, and you can join that.
There's a whole community devoted to Crypto Mondays.
Yes.
So that's the best community to be part of.
All right.
Connect with everybody in the room that's connected as well.
What's that?
Everyone who's in the Crypto Monday hub can connect with everybody.
Okay.
So you literally is as you exchange contact information.
Cool. Yeah. So everyone who joins the
Yeah.
hub.
Lisa, do you want to come up for like 30 seconds and maybe just
Do you want to show?
describe it to the people out there?
I don't think it's not going to work on your phone. I'm going to be able to see this.
Yes, so if we actually have a Crypto Monday hub, it's at joinhub.com. So when you join the hub, you will be able to connect with Eric as well as Mark and anyone who joined. So it's as if you exchange contact information, you can message each other. So we also have other hubs besides Crypto Monday hub. We have blockchain hubs, startup hubs, and lots of different communities that we create going forward. So it's a good opportunity to discover a lot of events as well as meet different people in the hub. So joinhub.com.
Okay, great. And are there? Do we have any questions from down the table around the room for Eric? I think we'll take like 2 or 3 questions and like get to the one. So
Yeah,
yes, sir.
a quick 2-part question. What are you doing in Hub or in blockchain that you talked a lot about identity and access management? So how can we ensure through blockchain we get rid of these 100 million user breaches that LinkedIn actually had? And the other question is, this is more about pivot. So what was your pivot if LinkedIn wouldn't have worked out?
I'm sorry, what's the second
So
question?
what was your pivot if LinkedIn wouldn't have been this successful?
Okay. Okay, the first question is how does blockchain solve the problem around data breaches and so forth? I would say 2 things to that, 2 answers. The first answer is that I think part of the solution has to do with people securing their own data rather than platforms exploiting the user data to for profit maximization. So that is a whole new change in the way that data gets used, right? And I'd like to see us go there. I'd like to see us have a more reasonable advertising model. As hard as that might be to believe.
So your model is advertising?
No, the model is not advertising.
Okay.
The model is a non-advertising. People paying for other people's identity information when they need to. So that's one. The second part of that answer is that I really have a lot of faith in a lot of the cryptographic tools that are being invented on as a result of blockchain. So a lot of that technology is still very new today. We talk about multi-party computation and zero knowledge proofs and stuff like that. And those technologies are coming and helping to secure this data in a way that is much better than somebody just hashing a password in a database and doing the hash wrong. I think that decentralization certainly helps with that as well. So I have confidence that we're going to be able to secure our data much better going forward, thanks to blockchain-based technologies. So that's what I would say, in answer to the first question. The second question is, if LinkedIn hadn't worked out as well as it had, what would we have pivoted to? I don't know, maybe we would have done advertising. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. LinkedIn has advertising. So, I don't know. Glad it worked out.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth. Thank you for speaking. It was a very enlightening talk. So I also have 2 questions. My first question is Hub built upon Ethereum, or what platform is it built on? And the second question is, when you surveil the space, there's a lot of competing platforms that are doing something similar, like Ethereum, Cardano, Tezos, the list goes on and on. How do you envision these platform wars are going to end up? Do you think there's going to be a clear winner? Do you think there's going to be different winners for different use cases and so on?
Wow, that's a really loaded question.
Dun, dun, dun.
The first question is, what is Hub built on in terms of blockchain technology? So one of the things that we are getting some freedom with is that we're technically defined as a protocol, which gives us the freedom to swap out technology components underneath. And so truth be told, we're still evaluating blockchains and seeing what we can build blockchains or build our protocol on. Right now we are using Ethereum and
Private or public?
I should say just very clearly, our tokens are on Ethereum. That's what I want to say. We're anchoring some things on Ethereum, and that's really the extent of it. That's using blockchain. We like Stellar. We actually have a dual token model. So we actually have two tokens that are in play. We're we like what Stellar is doing. But yeah, truth be told, we're still looking and evaluating blockchains to see what we can do. It doesn't look like right now Ethereum is going to be able to do it for us for a variety of reasons. So we're still evaluating. The second question is what's going to happen with all these blockchain projects, layer one. So I promised to talk about the truth this evening. So those of you who were there in the .com times, you might have remembered there were these things called application servers way back when. And there were a bunch of them. WebLogic, ATG. I don't know if these names mean anything to you. Cold Fusion was one of them. There were a bunch of them, and so just like what happened during that time, I do believe that there's going to be not everyone's going to survive. There are too many platforms, but in the end, I think there will be a handful of platforms that really make it, and those will be the ones that somehow, some way got developers to get on board. To be able to create dApps that are, to be able to create dApps, really easily, and the kind of the, token economics work on those platforms. So I think that that's going to happen. Who's going to win? I don't know, but it's going to be this kind of interesting journey where, maybe projects get merged, some of them go away. But eventually, there will be a few. I don't believe there will be one, but I believe there will be a handful that will really make it and be really robust platforms.
And frankly, I think the number one thing that projects need are communities. I mean, you and I both know the folks down in Harmony. We know a bunch of these other protocols. They're really interesting protocols, but they need to break through the noise, right? They need to get developers on board. They need to find use cases, and that's a lot of heavy lifting. I mean,
that's a lot of heavy lifting.
I'm involved in a project over at Anheuser-Busch. We're working with IBM with their Trust Your Supplier supply chain thing. I was just in a meeting with 10 chief procurement officers, large companies, and for them to onboard all their suppliers, those are hundreds of thousands of suppliers. Right. And I said to the IBM people, I said, this isn't going to magically happen. You're going to need a whole onboarding team really to go make this happen. So that building community is super important.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, platforms need evangelism, and that's how you get your developers and your communities on board.
Great. Well, you know what? We're going to get to the wine. Paramita, is Paramita here? She's out there getting the wine figured out. So we're going to go get to the wine, and we can continue the conversation outside. But first, Eric, I would like you to fish through these papers and pick a winner, and we will. Hey, Paramita. And we will hook up the winner with a nice bottle of whatever Paramita wants.
It's 2010 JCB number 65. It's a great long Pinot Noir Chardonnay. and it'll be just ready for your holidays.
All right, a nice bottle of champagne.
All right.
So please drop a card, and if you're interested for any events or JCP Wine Club membership, and it's not free to join, and please let us know what interests you. So we'll be happy to send you a bottle.
Yeah, and I'm a member of the wine club. It's great. This stuff shows up at my house. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. All right.
All right. The winner is Scott Harms.
All right, Scott. Well, come on over. We'll get a picture with you and Eric and Parmita and do all this, and then let's go. And a huge thanks again to Alexandra and McDermott for making this happen. The orbs and the BFAS. And, all right, let's go have some fun.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mark. That was fun.
Thank you, Eric. That was great.